Hello, my name is Gahl Sasson. We're going to talk a little bit about the transition of Uranus, the planet that rules Aquarius, the very, very powerful energy of unpredictability, wild revolution, disruption, explosions, moving from Pisces, which is the sign of water and waves, into Aries, which is the sign of fire and radiation. Now, it's really interesting that once every 84 years, this planet Uranus moved from Pisces to Aries, and it happened right on March 11th, which was last week, precisely when the earthquake and the tsunami hit Japan. And I think that what it really represents for us, now that we're going to have Uranus in Aries for the next, basically, almost like 6 years until 2018, it's a time of great change, because Aries is the first sign. It represents new beginning. Pisces represents the old and the old way of looking at things. So we're moving from the Omega into the Alpha, from the winter into spring. So it is really interesting, all these kind of coincidences, having the supermoon right at the equinox, having the full moon and the spring equinox, and at the same time this transition of Uranus from the end to the beginning. If you look at last time this cycle happened was 1927, and in fact, if we talk about earthquake, it's really pretty intense, because the last time that Uranus moved from Pisces to Aries was in 1927, and in May 22nd, 1927, there was an earthquake of 8.6 magnitude that hit China, killing 200,000 people. So there must be something about this transition from the past to the future, from the winter to the spring, that causes this kind of a revolution inside of us as well as outside. Now, if you look at cycles, because astrology is all about cycle, what happened 84 years ago, last time it happened, we see that besides that earthquake, there was a lot of things happening on the planet. For example, the Big Bang Theory was discovered. Our origins, in a sense, if you're talking about end and beginning, you can see that even science came with this new story, this new mythology, in a sense, which explains to us how we all came from this one little point, this grain of sand that was like so hot and so small that eventually exploded, resulting in us. The other thing that was happening is a lot of very interesting scientific / entertainment invention. For example, the first talking films, the jazz singer released at that time. But because Aries is also the sign of war, and Uranus talks about unpredictability and revolutions, you see that in 1932 the Nazis took over and started arming Germany, leading to World War II. Also, 1929, there was the National Depression and the World Economic Crisis. So you see that it can go many different directions, so it really depends on how we process and channel this energy. If you go one time even before, there were a lot of wars. Also, there was the Mexican-American Wars, where Texas and California were annexed, and also the discovery of Neptune around that time. There was also the Spring of Nations that happened in 1848, which is a really interesting time. It's a series of a lot of revolutions where liberal governments tried to break away from the old empires. It didn't work that well, unfortunately, and the empires survived until World War II, until basically the next Uranus moving after coming to Aries. But I think that a lot of historians actually are comparing what is happening right now in the Middle East and Northern Africa as some kind of a spring of nation. And it's really interesting that it's happening around the spring equinox, right when Uranus moves from Pisces into Aries, the sign of spring. So there is definitely a lot of parallels. We can only pray that their revolutions will be more successful than the ones that happen in other cycles of Uranus. They also talk about a lot of inventions, especially in the medical field, that we can see, but I think most of it, especially because of what happened with Japan, will be innovation in relation to the use of energy. Uranus, again, is related to patents. Thomas Edison was an Aquarius, Lincoln was an Aquarius. A lot of inventors and people that thought outside of the box were Aquarius, which is again the sign of Uranus. When it's moving into Aries, we can expect new things to happen in a pretty big global way. So have a great spring.